Do you know who was the biggest JRR Tolkien's fan in the Lord of the Rings cast? Did you see any bearded women in the movies? How many horses, or actors, do you think were hurt during the production of the film? Find this and more out in our 10 facts about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Hi, my name is Clive, and you're watching Ossa'm Movies. Actors who declined being part of the LOTR cast. Our favorite characters could have looked very different. Did you know that Jake Gyllenhaal auditioned to play Frodo? And that Liam Neeson passed on the role of Boromir? Yes, it's true. And the role of Éowyn was initially offered to Kate Winslet. There were also discussions about then-married couple Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman playing Faramir and Éowyn. But the most difficult role to cast was Aragorn. It was offered to Nicolas Cage, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Stuart Townsend. Finally, the role went to Viggo Mortensen, who only agreed to the role because of his son Henry, who was a fan of the books. Christopher Lee was one of the first people to be cast for the movies, though he wanted to play Gandalf, but was offered the part of the White Wizard Saruman instead. By the way, did you know why Sean Connery turned down the role of Gandalf? Because he had never read the books and didn't understand the script. An absolutely brilliant Gandalf. Gandalf the Grey is not a central character in the Lord of the Rings movies, but he is the one who helps bring life to the world of Middle-earth, and makes it vivid too. In some way, he is the closest analogy to JRR Tolkien himself in the trilogy. And in this respect, we should acknowledge the performance of the brilliant actor, Sir Ian McKellen, especially the attention he paid to the details while creating the character. Did you ever notice that Gandalf's accent isn't quite McKellen's natural voice? This is because the British actor decided to mimic Tolkien's accent, which sounds deeper and gruff, probably due to Tolkien's and Gandalf's love of his pipe. In many ways, Ian McKellen was an excellent casting choice, whose immortal line, "You shall not pass," goes down in the history of fantasy movies. Biggest LOTR fan among the actors. As previously mentioned, Sir Christopher Lee wanted to play Gandalf. This is because he was a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Lee was said to have read the Lord of the Rings trilogy every year, since the year it was published in 1954 until he passed away in 2015. He was also the only person involved with the Lord of the Rings film who had actually met JRR Tolkien. They once met by chance at a bar in Oxford. Superhero actors. Have you ever thought about how difficult it is to act in a fantasy film? First of all, the shooting took 18 months. Then, imagine the weight of all the armor and weapons they wore, fencing and languages and everything else that they had to learn. Aren't they real superheroes? If you don't agree, then here are some additional facts. Only 2 of the 9 Fellowship members didn't have to wear prosthetics. They are Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn and Sean Bean as Boromir. The rest had to spend every day with different latex additions on them. John Rhys-Davies, who portrayed Gimli, had severe allergic reactions to the heavy makeup used. In fact, it was so bad that his eyes swelled shut several times. Sean Bean had another problem. As he is deathly afraid of flying, he refused to fly to remote sets by helicopter. So, Bean had to make his way there on foot in his full costume. That definitely added color to the picture. Unsurprisingly for a fantasy film, a sword-fighting coach was there to train the cast. Olympic fencer Bob Anderson spent weeks training the cast before filming even started. And it turns out Viggo Mortensen barely needed it. It's amazing, but Anderson later said that Mortensen was the best swordsman he ever trained. Naturally, he had a stunt double, but most of the battle scenes Viggo did himself. But even though he was that good with swords, he still couldn't avoid some accidents. Keep watching this video for more details. And Elijah Wood, who played Frodo Baggins, has a special talent of a very different kind. Not blinking. So it seems like there was no need for the CGI in the scenes in Shelob's lair. Just Elijah's incredibly dry eyes. Viggo the Legend. JRR Tolkien considered Samwise Gamgee to be the true hero of the Lord of the Rings. But as far as the movie trilogy is concerned, our hero is Viggo Mortensen. Stories about him on the set of the Lord of the Rings are already legendary. He did his own stunts using a real steel sword, rather than one made from aluminum and rubber like the rest of the cast. And remember how Legolas and Gimli would count how many orcs they killed? It was hilarious! Because at a rough estimation, Mortensen is said to kill every stuntman on the production team at least 50 times each over the course of filming of the trilogy. The Danish actor isn't just a talented swordsman, he also learned to speak Elvish for the films. Moreover, Viggo formed such a strong bond with the horse he rode on set that he bought it from the owners. And Arwen's horse as well. injuries on set. Of course, a battle and action-packed fantasy movie entailed several injuries. Even Sir Ian McKellen managed to accidentally hit his head on the ceiling at Frodo's, and it actually remained in the final cut. Orlando Bloom as Legolas was thrown from a horse while filming The Two Towers and broke his ribs. And yet, he was back to filming the very next day. But you can find some videos from the set where the rest of the cast make fun of him for complaining about the pain. Sean Astin, who played Samwise Gamgee, was knocked unconscious by a heavy wooden loom on the set of Rivendell. Later, he stepped on a piece of broken glass while filming a scene where he rushes into the water. His foot needed 20 stitches, but the next day he was back on set. Elijah Wood was stabbed by Shelob's prop stinger during the shot in the spider's lair. The extremely painful injury actually put him in hospital for a couple of days. However, Viggo Mortensen managed to get much more than one injury. While filming a scene where he kicks an orc helmet, he broke 2 toes. This shot also went to the final cut as an extremely good one. In another scene, he chipped his tooth during a fight sequence. Elijah Wood remembered Mortensen insisting it be superglued back in place so he could keep working. Next time, a dagger thrown at Aragorn by an Uruk-hai during the final fight scene was a real dagger. It was supposed to miss and hit the tree behind Mortensen, but by accident, it was thrown straight at him. Luckily, Viggo's a great swordsman, so he managed to deflect the dagger with his sword. Get to know how the battle scenes with horses involved were shot to avoid their injuries. Women with beards. As a true Lord of the Rings fan, you know all of the jokes about the bearded dwarf women. But you probably didn't realize that there were bearded women on set. You'd hardly ever tell, but the fact is that many of the riders of Rohan in The Two Towers and The Return of the King were actually women. The characters were supposed to be male, but when the casting call was put out for horse riders, who also had to bring their own horses, most of those who showed up were women. Eager to use the trained horse riders, the crew opted for fake beards instead of further casting. By the way, there's a popular question on the internet. How many horses were hurt during the production of the trilogy? The answer is none. More than 200 horses were used in the shooting. And because they were needed in intense battle scenes where the horses could be harmed, both horses and riders were fitted with the same type of motion capture suit that Andy Serkis wore for his role of Gollum. They were filmed doing actions like galloping and rearing and later digitally inserted into battle scenes. So, not a single horse was hurt. All of the dead horses we see on screen are made of polystyrene. What a relief! Cameos and special extras. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is not just a film. The fans will agree that it's the greatest fantasy film ever. The not-so-fans will agree that it set a level which every epic movie one strives to achieve ever since. So thank you, Peter Jackson! Peter Jackson is obviously a fan of the director Cameo. We can see him in brief roles in every film of the trilogy at least once. In The Fellowship of the Ring, he appeared as a man eating a carrot in the village of Bree. In The Two Towers, we can spot him during the Battle of Helm's Deep as a soldier throwing a spear. In The Return of the King, he portrayed a pirate shot by Legolas. His other cameo in The Fellowship of the Ring is more subtle, and you have to know about it to actually see it. Remember the portraits over the mantelpiece in Bag End? They represent Bilbo's parents, and they certainly are Peter Jackson, almost unrecognizable without his bushy beard, and his wife and co-writer Fran Walsh. But the epic trilogy is also famous for its other special extras. You may not know their names, but they are the people whose work on the Lord of the Rings movies helped bring the Tolkien's masterpiece to life. The most notable is the appearance of conceptual designers John Howe and Alan Lee. They can be glimpsed during the prologue sequence of The Fellowship of the Ring, playing 2 of the 9 mortal men who were gifted with magical rings by Sauron. Later, in The Two Towers, Lee shows up again among the men of Rohan at Helm's Deep, with art director Dan Henna by his side. A number of other crew members can be seen in episodes, starting with soundtrack composer Howard Shore and conceptual designer for visual effects Christian Rivers, to Weta Workshop's blacksmiths. I hope you agree that these talented people deserve to make cameo appearances as a sign of respect for their hard work, right? Presents to the cast. Once shooting for the trilogy was finished, the cast members received the wrapped gifts to remind them of their roles. Each gift was specific to his or her character. Miranda Otto received one of Éowyn's dresses and her sword. Liv Tyler received Arwen's dyeing dress, and Orlando Bloom got one of Legolas's bows. Cate Blanchett loved playing Galadriel, so she was given a pair of prosthetic elf ears. Sir Ian McKellen also kept some items from his time playing Gandalf, including the wizard's staff, sword, and pointy hat. But Elijah Wood received a very special one-of-a-kind gift from director Peter Jackson. One of the golden rings used in the movies. Except that it wasn't that unique because it appeared that Andy Serkis got exactly the same ring. And both actors thought they had the only one. The Lord of the Rings Marathon. After all these curious facts, you'll probably want to rewatch the trilogy. Well, who wouldn't? But note that the combined running time of all 3 extended editions is 680 minutes. That is 11 hours and 20 minutes. That means if you really plan to have a Lord of the Rings marathon, you'll need almost a half of a day. So make sure you have enough popcorn. Are there any other facts you think should have been on the list? Share them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to not miss out on a video about your favorite movies.